I want to bring in Kevin Dalton. He's a political commentator. You can check out his work over on his X page at the Kevin Dalton. Kevin, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate your work, and I know you've been. I stumbled upon it when looking into something about Gavin Newsom, and you cover Gavin Newsom quite a bit. Some very interesting things I don't think the rest of the country has heard. I hadn't heard. I want to get into the specifics in this in a moment, but let me start with this. Describe Gavin Newsom as a leader.
Boy, that's tough right off the bat because Gavin Newsom pretty much does the opposite of leading. He goes in a downward trajectory where I think most people would expect there to be flourishing and economic prosperity. And despite what he says and what his taxpayer-funded propagandists say, he is quite the opposite of a leader.
Yeah, it's one of those things because Kevin, the guy's got to be running for president. There's no doubt about that, and the rest of the country is going to have to do the observing and judgment that you've been doing over the years. And I think I see Newsom and he's like immediately terrible to me. There's just something about him that really rubs me the wrong way. But I don't know if that's true for everybody. I think your work in shining a light on the stuff he's actually done is really, really important. Because I think to some people he comes off as slick and good looking and competent, and I don't get it, but I think a lot of people seem to go that way. Am I wrong?
Oh, you're exactly right. And I'm gonna appear like a hater here because of my tremendous forehead and terrible head of hair. But my God, Gavin Newsom has got the greatest head of hair on the planet, and it is absolutely what has created his career and the love that everyone has for Newsom. If he had my hair, if he was bald, if he had the Friar Tuck thing going on, no one would listen to a word he has to say. So he is a haircut. He is an overly gelled individual that has been privileged and lifted up from the very beginning. But it works because you can walk down the streets of California and you can see the homeless people and you're stepping over needles and you're getting robbed and you can't afford a house. But then you go, who's in charge here? Oh, it's that guy with the great head of hair. Let's make him president.
Who would have thought a haircut could do so much work? I was in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and my drive from the airport to where I was staying, I think I saw more homeless people in a drug addicted seeming state than I have in my entire life combined. And I mean, I used to work in New York City. I used to live near Philadelphia. It's not like I've never been to a city before. But the problems in California are massive. And these are problems, Kevin, as you point out, that Gavin Newsom has promised to solve his entire career. And he's been in leadership positions the entire time, and yet these problems still exist.
Yeah, going on 20 years, Gavin Newsom has vowed to solve homelessness in 10 years. So we're well beyond that. And again, no one seems to look around and go, wow, the streets are littered with homeless people, the exact opposite of what he's been saying from the beginning.
Let's go through one of the specifics on this. I had not even heard of this effort, honestly. It's called Care Court. Can you kind of walk us through the genesis of this and what's happened?
Sure. So obviously leaving severely mentally ill, drug addicted people on the streets to their own devices isn't working. So 2 or 3 years ago, Gavin Newsom came up with this great idea, Care Court. We are going to get these severely drug-addled people into a system where they no longer get to choose to do this. They're going to get the care that they need. They need doctors and housing and medication and job training and all of these things that they need to get them off the streets. This sounds like a wonderful idea because there are hundreds of thousands of families trying to get their loved ones help. But in California, as soon as you're 18, you get to make the decision to slowly commit suicide on the sidewalks. So to me, I was like, okay, I'm not a fan of Gavin Newsom, but What I'm even more of a, or less of a fan of is people dying on the streets of California. So let's fix this. So flash forward 2 years, we finally get some numbers from Care Court. Hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars of course, are gone. And Gavin Newsom promised that this would get around 50,000 people into the system off the streets a year. I can't even remember the exact numbers, but I think a few thousand ended up signing up. And then most of those were just kicked by the courts. They weren't even allowed to go through this mandatory system of getting help. So it finally spiraled down to 22 people ended up being forced into care by the Care Court. So started out, 50,000 people a year are going to be helped, hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars, 22 people ended up in the system. There were about 600, 700 other cases that were voluntary. And I don't know if you know much about homeless people doing drugs on the street, but that's pretty much the only thing they do voluntary. They're not going to leave that. So 22 people, and we don't even know what the outcome of those 22 people were. But this is such a perfect example of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars just going away and no results. And then Newsom just moves on to the next thing. He puts a little more gel in his hair, slicks it back. People go, ha ha, he's beautiful. Here's my tax dollars. Next president.
I believe the number was around $250 million they spent. And when you take away the people who were rejected from the courts and the non-voluntary people who were just, hey, yeah, sure, I'll come off the streets, which you don't need a court system for that. 22 people, almost $250 million. Absolutely amazing, even by California standards. And I say that as a person who has just watched a horrific fire, which has all sorts of causes that we could get into as well, but a horrific fire that wipes out massive areas of California. And I will say, even with my expectations of Gavin Newsom and California, I am blown away at how horrible the recovery has been, how these houses don't seem to be being rebuilt at all. Largely just because I would have figured Newsom, knowing he's going to run for president, would have done more to just push this through for his own political gain. What is the state of the recovery from this fire, Kevin?
Well, you only need to look at the previous fires that have already happened. Gavin Newsom likes to talk about Paradise, California, and the climate change that ravaged Paradise with the Camp Fire several years ago. Well, spoiler alert, everyone, it wasn't climate change. It was Gavin Newsom's campaign donor, PG&E, that burned down Paradise. Worse yet, the recovery effort. I think less than 10% of Paradise has been rebuilt since. This is what, 5, 6, 7 years? Grizzly Flats, the same exact way. These are towns in California completely wiped off the face of the earth, either by arson or Newsom's campaign donors, which he says is climate change, and then there's zero recovery effort. The people in the Palisades are lucky that they're Hollywood adjacent. If they're up in Northern California where these other towns were that are non-existent, the help is stopped. There is no recovery. So even as abysmal as it is right now, and permitting efforts in the Palisades is like 30% maybe, there's thousands of people waiting for their permits to be approved to try to build. In the meantime, their bills are adding up, and they've got these people, the corporate buyers are coming in trying to scoop up their land now because it's just easier. It's just an absolute mess. For somebody who wants to run for president, you'd think, maybe start to address the homelessness. Maybe try to get people back in the homes from this apocalyptic fire. There are people sleeping in RVs outside of their burned out homes, and they're getting parking tickets from the city. This is the contempt that elected officials have for their constituents in California. Why would you elect any of these people to higher office and give them more people's lives to destroy?
It is inexplicable. And you talk about some of these areas are just, they're really wealthy areas. People have lots of money. They obviously had good insurance. There's only one place where this is failing, and it's the government. It's just absolutely incredible. One more example, which is probably my favorite long-term example of what's going on in California. has to be the bullet train. Watching this thing not be built over this long of a period, it's like everything I think about and believe about the world just as a long-running Netflix series. It's just incredible that this is still going on. What is the state of this train?
Well, 16 years in, let's back up. So this is like Karacourt all over again. We're like, hey, you know what? This is a great sounding idea. Going from Los Angeles to San Francisco, jumping on a train, it gets you there like that. That sounds great. Well, it was supposed to cost $30 million. It's now going to cost $30 billion. It's now going to cost $140 billion. It's no longer going from San Francisco to Los Angeles. It's now going from Merced to Bakersfield, where no one wants to go. And not a single piece of track has ever been laid. Tens of thousands of jobs have been created to create nothing that's usable. You know, these are all, I hate to say glorified welfare jobs, because these guys are doing real work. There's actual labor involved here, but none of it is coming together. The land is not all still owned. They're still talking about now even expanding it. They're like, oh no, this is going to go from San Diego to Los Angeles to Bakersfield to Merced to San Francisco. And look, we have Southwest, people. We have the 5 freeway. We have ways to get us there already. Someone did the math, and you could fly people private for 20 years back and forth from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and it still would not cost the same as this bullet train that will never be completed and will never make a dime.
Oh, and not to mention, it's made everybody where the train has got passed through miserable, because they've been taking their land, they've been shaking up the entire communities. It's really fascinating. So let me last one here for you, Kevin, because I look at all this and I say, America should be able to see this and should be able to understand how bad he has been. The train wasn't all his fault, to be fair. I mean, the last part of this has been his fault, but this has been a really terrible run as governor, preceded by a scandal-ridden, mayoralship in San Francisco. To me, it's just on its face obvious that this man should never be president of the United States. But you see how he's been in California. With some sections of that crowd, he's still popular. Can Gavin Newsom actually become president of the United States?
I think only because he is the Democrats' best shot right now, which, to give you an idea of the state of the Democratic Party, Gavin Newsom is their best shot. So, call it a 50-50 shot. There is a lot of people out there who just are going to vote for him because there's a D next to his name and nothing else matters. Forget his record. He's not a Republican, and that's going to get his vote for a lot of people. Hopefully, they see through the hair. Hopefully, he starts going through some male pattern baldness in the next 6 to 8 months, and people are like, oh, this guy's a fraud. I don't know. Something's got to happen.
Maybe we need to have like drones flying through his window at night and just pluck individual hairs until it starts happening. It's an idea. I like it. It would cost a lot less than the train. Kevin Dalton, political commenter. Make sure to check out his X account. He's got all sorts of stuff, great stuff on California, Gavin Newsom, and so many other issues. It's at the Kevin Dalton. Make sure to check him out on X. Kevin, really appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me, Stu. We'll see you next time.